But, we don't carry a lot. We carry really 6 to 7 passing concepts and 2 run concepts last year.
On this episode of the Coaching Coordinator Podcast, we are joined by Josh Goodloe, head coach at Paradise Honors High School in Arizona. Coach Goodloe shares his unique journey from serving in the U.S. Army to becoming a successful high school football coach. Under his leadership, Paradise Honors quarterback tied a national record of 91 touchdowns in a season and passed for over 11,000 yards in his career. Coach Goodloe delves into his progression and the evolution of his high-powered air raid offense. Be sure to stay tuned for our Winning Edge takeaways following this interview. On today's Coach and Coordinator Podcast, we're talking the passing game, especially as it relates to the air raid. And joining me is the head coach of Paradise Honors High School. Their quarterback was number 1 in the country last year, set all the state records, tied a national record for 91 touchdowns, had over 11,000 yards in his career, was over 74% completion in his career. Some incredible numbers. So we're going to talk about Coach's journey to Arizona and where he's at right now, as well as his progression and how they evolved into this high-powered offense. So our guest is Coach Josh Goodloe, head coach at Paradise Honors. Coach, great to have you here on the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
So, Coach, I want to talk a little bit about your journey. I guess not the typical journey for you. Didn't go through initially becoming a teacher. You were in the military.
Correct. I went in the military after I got out of high school. Couple years removed from there, I joined in 2005 with the United States Army.
And so what was the progression then from the military to where you are right now? I mean, what moved you from being a soldier to being a coach?
So when I was in the military, I had time, volunteer with Special Olympics, just local youth teams at the Washington State area. And that's kind of what drove me to go be, special education teacher and then wanting to get into coaching high school football to give back. I played the game in high school and played the game growing up, so that was kind of my path, how I found that passion.
And along the way, you started learning the air raid offense, obviously what you run right now, but talk to us a little bit about how you learned the game.
So, I owe a lot of it to, the first kind of coach I worked under was Coach Johnny Rodriguez at Sandra Day O'Connor out in Arizona, so I learned a lot from him as far as structure and organization. And then, I worked under some other great head coaches, and Jimmy Carter out of Arizona, and then Coach Gary Ball and Coach Kendrick Farley, where I kind of learned more of the air raid and kind of polished that philosophy and the kind of the practice structure and all that of the air raid offense.
So talk to us about where you are right now. What gave you the opportunity? How did you get to become the head coach at Paradise Honors?
So I went over to Paradise Honors in 2019 to become the offensive coordinator. And then in 2020, the head coach had stepped down to take another job. So the athletic director, Mr. Ben Clark, presented me with the opportunity to kind of take over the program in 2020. So that's how I kind of got into the position I am now.
So the first thing you did offensively is you did install the air raid, but that didn't necessarily mean it was going to be success right away.
Yeah, correct. So the first thing I kind of did, a little program history there. They only had about 28 kids when I took over and didn't have a JV team at all. So kind of my first goals was we're fortunate to have a middle school program that plays tackle football. First thing was to keep them and then implement the air raid down into that middle school. So those kids had an opportunity to learn that. Then by the time they got to high school, we'd keep adding to it and they were ready to go.
Installing the air raid always isn't an easy thing. I know it was one of the questions that came up last night in moderating the National Air Raid Convention is, so what are some of those things early on that you have to face? I guess obstacles along the way that it's not going to look like you did this last year initially with a quarterback who set a national record for touchdowns. But how does it look initially? What are some of the recommendations you have for coaches who want to put this in or who are putting it in for the first time this year?
So, the biggest thing with us is just the practice and the philosophy and just believing in that. We implemented it 4 years ago. Things were not smooth as far as seeing the numbers and the progression right away and instant results. But we just stuck with that, stayed with the course and the building blocks, and then just kept getting better and better each year.
I know one of the other questions that came up was about the outside pressures. Anytime you come in, you're doing something new. I don't know what they were used to before as far as an offense, but especially if it's not producing those results that everybody wants right away, there does become that pressure from the outside. How do you deal with that?
So a lot of it was, having our first parent meeting and just kind of laying out the program, our philosophy, and everything we believed in. First year there, we went 4-6, which more wins than they've had there the previous 2 years before that. So parents started seeing a little bit of success. And then in year 2, really being a head coach there, we went to the quarterfinals, and then last year ended up making a state title run and, seeing the results. So parents are pretty happy and kind of just believe in everything that we have.
So let's dig into your offense a little bit. You said much as possible, you try to keep true to the air raid and its, original design. Talk to us about first the menu. What are the things that you carry within the offense?
Yeah, so we're a true air raid team. So we got our 6th game, which is the 4 verts. We're a really big mesh and shallow team. Those are kind of our 2 staples of everything we run and what we're really solid at. We spend a lot of time on that mesh each day in practice. And then we'll carry the Y sail, and then we carry Y corner and a couple other quick game concepts. But, we don't carry a lot. We carry really 6 to 7 passing concepts and 2 run concepts last year.
What were those runs for you?
So last year we were inside zone, and then we ran GT.
And so when you talk to any air raid team, the playbook is always thin, and it really comes down to how you do it. And a lot of that is the install and then practice throughout the year. So let's start with your install. What does your install look like? Are you a 3-day install guy like a lot of the air raid?
Yeah, so we're a 3-day install. Day 1, we'll put in our 1 run inside zone, and then we put in 2 quick game concepts, which for us is Y stick and Y corner. And then we run the 4 vert game and then the shallow game, and we also work mesh every single day.
When you're looking at practice structure for this, now do you guys split between offense and defense, or are you a 2-platoon team?
So, the crazy thing is the last 4 years, because of numbers, we've been a 1-platoon team. So everybody's played both ways. This year, the program has actually grown to 95 kids. So we've actually 2-platoon this year and found it even to be more efficient than we have been in the past, because we're really down to 90 minutes of practice every single day. And, the kids are flying through it and picking it up and understanding everything we're trying to do.
Let's talk a little bit about that practice structure, what it looked like when you were a 1-platoon team, guys going both ways. Obviously, the simplicity is something that helps with that when you're cutting the time in half for everybody. But what was the practice structure typically like on the work days, on those heavy work days throughout?
So we were always a 2-hour practice team. We would usually go about 45 minutes offense, 45 minutes of defense a day. And then we had about 20 of special teams. And that was kind of how we structured it the last 3 or 4 years, being a single platoon team.
Now, looking at how that moved forward to being 2-platoon, you obviously can be more efficient. For you guys, first of all, was there any thought in, hey, we can add a little bit more now, or were you guys very disciplined in saying we're going to stick to, this small set of plays we have within our playbook?
No, we've always just stuck to what we've had in our playbook. The only thing we kind of add is we'll add tags off a mesh or tags off a shallow post wheel, kind of things like that, but never went and added a bunch of new concepts, a bunch of new plays or anything like that. We just got really good and efficient at what we'd run.
Now, looking at basically the past 2.5 years, as you told me, you had Gage Baker transferred in as a sophomore. He's going to School of the Mines, a D2 program now. The guy was about 6 foot, so as far as height, definitely a normal high school type of quarterback. But he's slinging the ball all over the place, over 11,000 yards passing. He had 11,769 yards passing, 173 touchdown passes for an average of 392.3 yards per game. He completed 766 of 1,033 passes and threw only 24 interceptions. His completion rate was over 74%. So doing things at a very high level, obviously a talented kid who really understood the system and where to go with the football. When you look at your quarterback the last 2 years, obviously you'd probably consider him a prototypical guy for your offense. How would you describe him?
He's the smartest kid I've ever coached. He understands the game of football, understands the coverages, and knew exactly where we were going with the football, and the ball came out quick. One thing it don't show on there is the last kind of 3 years is our team, as much as we throw the ball, they would only give up between 5 and 6 sacks a year, which is pretty phenomenal considering what we do when we were a throw first team. And it's all because of him and his decision making and able to get the ball out quickly.
Yeah, when you look at your offensive line, we mentioned Gage is a guy who's 6 foot. By high school standards, that's about average, 6 foot, 6'1", 180. What was your offensive line like?
So our offensive line, we were probably about 6 foot. We had a couple guys at 6'2" across the board, but we were really athletic up front, more the tight end type on our offensive line.
With this offense now, what would you say, I guess, the last couple of years here, what was Gage's favorite concept? What did you see him really wanting to throw? You guys called a lot.
He never really said he had anything that was his favorite concept. He kind of loved them all as being that drop back guy that would like to throw the ball. We were a big, like I said, shallow and mesh team, and those were kind of my favorites, and he was really good at throwing those as well. So I would have to probably, if he had a favorite, maybe one of those two between 91 or 92.
Yeah, how Mummy spent half his clinic talk going over shallow and mesh and how those two work together and showed that how they're complementary. I would love to hear you talk about both of those and how you feel those work very well in tandem.
So they are very complementary to us and how we run them. We like to attack the structure of the defense with that low crosser guy, and then one kind of coming over the middle. We're really big at tagging post on that, and some other concepts we have with drive and mills that will tag off the 92 and 91. Everything kind of looks the same, but they're just different concepts for us.
So with the tags, what typically are you calling those for? What are you looking for when you're going to tag those things in?
So a lot of the times with us, when we go to a tag and we just run our base 92 and 91, we're really reading those outside guys, outside linebackers, and we read up to the safeties. Once we see safeties starting to jump our spot routes and our dig routes, when we like to get the post game over the top, and we like to run that post wheel concept. Our running back and outside receiver.
How does the progression change for your quarterback when you tag one of those things in?
So really the progression never changes. When we run shallow, we always read that flat defender. If he takes away our shallow, we get eyes up. We're getting eyes up to the safety on that big post concept. So really our reads and how we read everything kind of stays the same for the quarterback. And we're really big on spacing and grass too. So that's what they look for. And if they have the grass, they're taking it.
So you don't go top down on that because you're not tagging it necessarily because you saw something, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, so the big thing, like when we tag, it's always based off kind of how they spin safeties and how they rotate those safeties. And that kind of gets into when we'll tag. Really, we're a big post tag team. We love to tag that post because we get a lot of safeties that cheat down and try to take our dig, our shallows, and our mesh away all the time. So it really opens up that post when we see them start to do that.
So, Coach, for our listeners out there, I would like you to pick one of your favorite concepts and walk us through the key coaching points for it.
So I'd say my favorite concept is just our base 92, which is mesh for us. And so we always start going through quarterback progression. We teach them, they read we call it high, low to middle. So we always read our out route to whatever receiver's on the out route. And then we'll read down to our shoot from the running back to our mesher coming across that way. And that's kind of the read through our progression. We work mesh every single day at practice, and our big teaching point is teaching our Ys who set the depth of our mesh of, hey, we're staying on the toes of the undercovered linebacker, and we are looking to get no deeper than 6, and we're stepping on his toes. And then the other big teaching point is working with the receiver who's coming underneath, trying to get him on a little vertical step there so he can let the Y get that depth step before he works underneath on the mesh.
A big advantage to the mesh beyond using it to beat man coverage where you're running guys away from those cover guys, chasing them. It is very good against zone as well. I mean, it is a multiple purpose route. I know a lot of teams who are non-air raid put it into their playbook to have that answer for teams who want to cover them down on their RPOs, and then you see them go to, mesh pretty quickly if they're seeing a lot of man coverage. But as I said, it works really well on zone too. So what are the keys to running this as a play that defeats zone coverage? What are the adjustments you're teaching to your players, and how do you get those taught?
So for us, the big thing we teach our guys is, our Y, the guy who sets the depth of the mesh, he's always reading kind of those linebackers in coverage. And he'll make a call, letting the other mesher know whether man. And if it's man, you carry our mesh and work a little depth on there. And if it's zone, the minute we mesh, both of those guys kind of snap off and will set down in the grass and give the quarterback his numbers. So, we work that every single day in practice. Like I said, we'll put a linebacker out there, and have them, turn to run, turn to drop. And we just really work with them reading and being able to identify the zone and the man.
And are there any rules for, I guess, these receivers as they're coming across? I know Hal mentioned a couple yesterday that if you think it's zone, right? And so you did see in some of the shots he was showing that these guys were kind of throttling down a little bit like it was zone, even though it was man. But the throw, I guess those guys getting on the same page made it right. How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, so we're kind of the same there, where they'll read and throttle that down in zone and recognizing that, setting it down. And each day, now that we're two-platoon, we spend about 10 minutes on our mesh drill every single day. And we even, in the springtime, we were spending 15 to 20 running our mesh drill. And so that's really how they become comfortable with it. And then through the summer, when we do all of our passing league stuff, that's kind of where they get a lot of live reps. We did a lot of sevens this summer just because we're so young, so they could start getting those reps and seeing all of that stuff.
So, Coach, the program, as you said, has come a long way. 4 wins that first year. This past year, you guys were 11-3. You're making it deep into the playoffs now. So, obviously, air raid, yes, that's a part of it. But I'm sure there's much more to the story of your program. What are the other things that have helped you along the way and is helping your team find success?
So the biggest thing when I took over was just establishing a culture with these guys and giving them something to be excited about. The one great thing about us is we haven't had kids in this day and age. A lot of kids will leave and go to other programs. All of our kids have stayed here. We've even had kids move in and transfer to us. And a lot of it's just because building football program, the biggest thing was just building relationships with these young men and women who have came out and played. And once we kind of built those relationships and they understood what we're about, it's been phenomenal. Each week things we do different that other programs have done that I've picked up to is feed them on Thursday night. We call it's family day, and we do a big team meal with them on Thursday night. And we try to have speakers come out and talk to the players and about different things in life and, different aspects like that. And then also on Fridays before the game, we try to get together and have sandwiches with them and just things like that we've done. And, a lot of team building and bonding where we get outside of football and do things like that.
Coach, just looking at the overall picture of your program and last thing on, I guess, your systems, your X's and O's, how do you make sure that guys are, staying ahead of the game, keeping up with all the changes that might happen or the trends you might see, especially on your offense and defenses you might have to go against, but obviously putting a good defense on the field as well. What's your approach there in the offseason?
I get my staff. We go down to some coaches' clinics. We'll try to sit with some of the colleges around and learn and stuff like that. I'm always big on social media of trying to talk to the air raid guys. New things and new wrinkles. They're seeing where they're at and things they're adding. So, we stay up to date trying to do things like that.
Coach, I appreciate you taking some time with us and sharing about your program at Paradise Honors. And certainly best of luck to you and the Panthers here in 2024.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Here are winning edge takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1. Set expectations early when you take over a program. Doing something new and different will always bring questions and criticism. In general, it takes a minimum of 3 years to build a program from struggling to successful. Coach Goodloe began with a parents' meeting that set expectations for his program and made for an easier transition. Having some level of success helped them in this regard. 2. Attention to detail. Air raid teams are successful when they understand that it's about the how more than the what. The detail that goes into installing and practicing the schemes and concepts is what brings success. This is why you'll hear many air raid programs talking about having a thin playbook. For them, it's about the detail they put into their execution. And 3, have complementary plays that work in a progression of giving answers. An example of this is the use of mesh and shallow. When teams start to take away the mesh, the shallow becomes a good answer. When safeties begin to drop down on the digs from the shallow concept, then the post tag provides a big play. Historically, the best offensive systems operate this way. Air raid provides an example of a cohesive system of plays. Another example would be the Delaware Wing Tee. We're working on our in-season content this summer and also looking ahead to the 2025 off-season. This podcast has always been about the coach, both our guests and the listeners, and we want to enhance that in 2025. We're looking for suggestions for series hosts like we've had with Culture OS with Rob Pomazak, Accelerate Everything with Dub Maddox, and The Passing Lab with Josh Herring. If you have a suggestion of someone you think would make a great series host, or if you're interested in that yourself, please email me, keith@coachandcoordinator.com. We're also looking for coaches who would like to share their takeaways for each episode by being our Winning Edge guest. After we record an episode, we'll share that interview with you, then record your takeaways and share them as part of the episode. Finally, we are bringing back your call, our series curating ideas from our audience. If you have an idea you'd like to share that'll be helpful to coaches across the country, email me, keith@coachandcoordinator.com. We are looking for these now to share in season. So think of your best ideas that'll help coaches in season and let us know what those are. Be sure to check out the 10% Toolkit. Explore these pages for helpful tips, a winning edge, and special promotions for Coach and Coordinator podcast listeners. The link is in the show notes. Sign up for a weekly tip sheet which shares the best ideas of each week. And follow us on X @Coach K. Grabowski.